light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. Today I wanted to offer a few thoughts on what, after all, is genuinely good relationship. It seems there are plenty of presentations and discussions about how to do things wrong. What is bad relationship? What is unhealthy relationship? And I wonder sometimes if we would actually know good relationship if we ever found it. We don't seem to do enough talking about what is holistically or in whatever way, what is genuinely good relationship. What principles run through it? What essential ingredients? And it would be easy to say, well, of course there must be love. Well, yes, of course there must be love. Of course there must be honesty and truth. That one, it seems a lot of people would argue with, because I run into a lot of people who would rather be patronizing and less than honest, presumably attempting to protect someone from the harsher edges of life experience, telling somebody what they want to hear because we don't want them to feel bad. I guess I tend to be more of the mindset that it's better to be honest and learn how to deal with difficult feelings rather than to try to avoid them, because we'll never succeed in fully avoiding them. Occasionally one will meet parents who want to protect their children from every conceivable danger or threat. But the problem inherent with there being a child and a parent is the expectation, the probability, if you will, that the child will outlive the parent, and there will be a time when the parent isn't there anymore to do that protection. And the question then will be whether the child has learned how to sufficiently protect or defend itself. In trying to figure out, therefore, what is this good relationship for which we're aiming? What do we actually want to have happen? One of the basics is that none of us has the whole picture. That because I think perhaps one of the reasons there are so many people on this planet is that each of us is looking at the picture of life from a different angle, from a unique perspective, and that the picture of the wholeness of life is so vast and so complex. It would take that many people or more to be able to perceive all the different pieces and put them together well enough to actually come up with a whole picture of life. A whole picture of life that would not be completely visible from any particular place, but something that could be viewed from so many angles that no matter where you are, no matter to where you move, there will always be something new and wonderful to discover. The other thing we have to remember in trying to consider what is genuinely good relationship is that even the terms genuinely good are so subjective, so context sensitive. What somebody in Asia considers genuinely good may be entirely different from what someone in South America considers genuinely good. The question we're left with when we consider things like that is, how do we create a world in which what each person sees as genuinely good is attainable, is reachable, is doable, rather than having some living a life that is, quote, genuinely good at the expense of others who are suffering. This has too often been the pattern of humanity in the past, that the wealth and prosperity of a much smaller percentage of the population were supported by the sacrifices and suffering of a much larger percentage of the population. The rich having desirable lives at the expense of the poor. Instead of understanding that both are so interconnected, it makes absolutely no sense. If the poor are supporting a good life for the wealthy, it would seem that the least the wealthy could do is to be sure that the poor have enough, that they don't have to starve themselves to death, that they don't have to suffer any more than absolutely necessary in order to create the goods and services that the wealthy feel that they need. The genuinely good relationship is thus a matter of valuing each and every person pretty much equally. In seeking to do genuinely good relationship toward each other, then, it's about watching and listening. It's about understanding that even the smallest contribution may still be essential. It's about understanding that it is important to include each and every person, to think in terms of each and every person's welfare, to think in terms of any poor man's child potentially being the next Leonardo da Vinci that creates breakthroughs and discoveries and insights and means by which humanity as a whole can move forward. To have genuinely good relationship, consequently, requires ongoing vigilance, ongoing understanding of what is important to the other person, ongoing listening, of letting the other person tell you what exactly it is that they need, instead of presuming what they need, to actually ask them. To give something that is not usable to the recipient is generally much more a matter of one's own ego and pride and narcissism than it is of actually empowering that person. To have genuinely good relationship, then, you have to allow each of you to be both teacher and student. Each has to be able to speak and listen and educate the other about who the individual is and what they're experiencing, what they experience as a need. In the similar sort of way, each has to be a student, being willing to be taught by the other, being willing to accept that my way is not the only way to do whatever needs done, that this other person has a different way and is doing it, and maybe doing it effectively and getting lots accomplished, but just not in the same way that I do. The genuinely good relationship, however, is not competitive, but collaborative. The genuinely good relationship, in my opinion at least, but using the human body as a metaphor as well, it's interconnected organs and functions and activities, many of which are incomprehensible to most people. Even though I have a physical body, I can't claim for one moment to explain to you exactly how all of its processes work. We're still learning so much. In trying to learn about genuinely good relationship, though, it seems to me our best resource is each other, in allowing each other to be teachers and allowing ourselves to be teachers, instead of saying, well, I really don't have anything worth sharing, I'm sure, and wanting to go hide in a corner because it's embarrassing not being able to ask questions. But the best teachers I had were not the ones that provided the best answers, but they were the ones who knew how to ask questions so that the entire room of people, the entire class, could learn together. Because there were things that I could learn from other people in the class that even the teacher couldn't teach. I suppose it's about presuming that there is something valuable to be learned within every person you ever meet. That if we could know their full story, if we could know the way they understand language, if we could know how God or the divine has revealed God's self to that person, that it may be the beauty of a Hubble telescope picture, that it may be the perfection of the mysterious, that things operate in such amazing synchronicity and balance. In amongst all of this interconnection, it seems to me one of the important things to remember is that violence is not the answer, or as someone said, if violence is the answer, what's the question? The violence is that which tears down at every person instead of building up, instead of being genuinely good relationship. Violence is at the opposite end of the spectrum, wanting to be selfish, wanting to be destructive to something that may in fact be quite necessary. Somebody asked me once, what is the strength of vulnerability? And I guess the one that jumped out to me was that it allows for a kind of truth and a kind of honesty that is extremely difficult to find within any other situation. But it is also the push and pull, the give and take, the the symbiosis, the mutuality of life. Symbiosis being the idea that there are two things in relationship where each depends upon the other for the things that can provide that one cannot produce for oneself. It would be like plants and animals, or plants and human beings, that they exhale carbon dioxide, we exhale carbon dioxide, they exhale oxygen, and consequently each of us is making the air more suitable for the other. If one or the other completely disappeared, the other would die because there'd be no way to keep the cycle going. What genuinely good relationship consistently provides, therefore, is an invitation to a genuinely healthy, mutually supportive, collaborative sort of community. If we're never willing to take our turn of being the one in need, I once joked with someone, life is a collaborative effort. We all take turns of being the one in need. The interesting thing I found after coining that was that nobody really wants to take their turn of being the one in need. We all want to be the one who blesses others, but we don't want to be the one who needs to be blessed by others. If we're not willing to embrace that vulnerability, though, and willing to be the one who is loved by others, we will have a whole room full of people trying to give something to someone else, and nobody will receive anything, and it breaks down the whole community because it's the give and take. It's that this person help this person in this situation, and this person will help this person in that situation. What I keep making reference, that to which I keep making reference, that I'm keep forgetting to mention, though, is this idea that it's not just ideas, that it is moving oneself to actions, that it is understanding the relationships, understanding the dynamics, understanding the push and pull, but ultimately what really matters is actually getting out there and doing it. I used to tease my college professors when I was doing my master's degree that any idea without an application is worthless. That there is something, when we say good relationship, it's a noun that refers to interconnection between two people, but the bigger part of the word is that it has to do with relating, that it has to do with initiating communication, and it also has to do with receiving something from the other person, that if no one is willing to receive, it is impossible to demonstrate generosity. Genuinely good relationship is composed of so many qualities and so many dynamics and so much giving and receiving that it's sometimes difficult to figure out what really is happening. Sometimes we're simply standing too close. Because life is an ongoing development, however, there's also this reminder in all these sorts of contemplations of what is genuinely good relationship. Relationship by its very nature requires more than one person. Requires somebody daring to make a contribution, to make a statement, to be generous. One of the basics to remember about good relationship in particular is that it has to do with people coming together, with collaboration rather than competition. Competition could leave us in a situation in which there is nobody else. And so, like the competition of a Monopoly game, one person will finally win by having all the money and bankrupting everybody else in the game, at which point the game will completely end. The only way to keep life going, to keep relationship happening, is for there to be give and take, for there to be someone who is being generous, and for there to be someone who is willing to receive, who is willing to allow the person's wisdom and generosity to be a blessing to one's own life. The additional concentric circle around that, though, the additional audience, if you will, are all the people watching and noticing what's happening, learning about each of the people involved through watching the interaction, but also learning of possible ways that they may relate to others within their own life. The very word relationship, of course, requires more than one person. It's not something you can ever do all on your own. by embracing vulnerability and embracing communication and honesty and truth, possibility becomes absolutely infinite. And all conclusions become tentative conclusions. Tentative in the sense that this is the answer that we can work with until such time as we acquire more information. And not to become so financially or professionally or any other way admired in that one solution. That if an alternative, easier method is found, that it isn't ignored, but rather that it becomes a more effective addressing of life's problems than the previous system ever could. When all is said and done, I don't know if any of us will ever succeed in having the good relationships we seek, the wonderful things for which we wish. But I know that aiming for anything less than the very best that we can contribute only makes things worse, only allows us to stagnate and resign ourselves to feeling very defeated. In coming to terms with a pursuit, in coming to terms with a pursuit or an idea, an envisioning of what genuinely good relationship actually looks like, the next step, of course, is to figure out how can the principles behind those actions become part of my daily life now. To the extent that I can live this out and share it with people, it's entirely possible that I will succeed in making the world a better place. Ultimately, when we speak of genuinely good relationship, the thing to remember is that it is relationship. There's no recipe for life for the exact right way to do it that will work in all circumstances, because every individual within every relationship is unique. As much as something may have worked with someone else, it won't necessarily work with the person in front of you, and as much as you yourself responded one way to a past situation, you may feel differently for a variety of reasons and respond differently this time, even if it comes from the same person, the same situation, but somehow we're never the same from one moment to the next, because everything is developmental and everything is formative. Every time we interact, every time we express and get a response, positive or negative, it shifts the way we'll do that the next time, because we'll have that one more memory as part of the context for how we respond to the next occurrence of even the same question or challenge. Allowing for all that mystery, accepting that there is this unknowableness to future life, that we can come with our best efforts and our best intentions, but ultimately we really don't know for sure, and to be okay with that. To allow life to be a relationship rather than a recipe, to allow it to be something that is jointly created by every person involved, to allow it to be something that takes on newness, that invites discovery, something that is best served by leaving our arrogance, our condescension aside, leaving that behind and entering into it with humility and understanding that within that moment, even the least educated person or the most unexpected synchronicity could be the insight that makes everything make sense for us. Even sometimes in our awkwardness, in our stumbling, in not having the right words to say, even that can be an instruction to those around us as they watch to see how we handle this sort of challenge, because it is very unlikely that any of us will encounter any challenge that hasn't been faced by countless other people in other times and places, and that anyone watching us may encounter at some future time within their own lives. And if they see how to handle frustration, how to handle anger or surprise or disappointment, if we model for them how one deals with being majorly disappointed, how one recovers from suffering loss, how one processes a point of internal healing. In some cases, we definitely hope that no one else will ever suffer as we ourselves have suffered. We don't want anyone to ever go through what we've gone through. And yet there is no way that we can guarantee the rest of humanity that that will never happen. I would like to think I'm the last person who will ever struggle with some of the things I have faced, but I don't think that's a realistic expectation. And there are times when no particular purpose seems to be served by my misfortune, by the pain that I endure. And yet I know there's somebody watching, and someone who may face a different challenge in the future for which my experience might be a point of reference, so that they will answer that challenge in a different way because what they know of how I experienced and responded to a particular challenge of mine. Even the challenges won't be exactly the same, but something about living my life openly where people can see it and people can see what upsets me and what disturbs me and what challenges me and what inspires me, that creates a breadth of knowledge for people around me that they wouldn't otherwise have. All of which figures into coming up with genuinely good relationship. It's something that shifts and changes from one moment to the next. It's something that requires love, that requires as much serious thought as we can give it, but also requires the ability to notice the absurdity and, when appropriate, to laugh. And to be able to laugh even at ourselves. There's a witticism coined by I'm not sure who, that he who is able to laugh at himself will never cease to be amused. How essential is it for us to be amused? I suppose it depends on who you ask. But the point being that we should not take ourselves so lightly that we don't notice the meaning and the value and the mystery and the treasure that we each embody, and not to take ourselves so seriously that we lose the ability to laugh, or that we fail to notice the absurdity, or that we take a moment of misfortune and turn it into an even bigger tragedy than it was to begin with. That in some ways our comedy allows us to limit our tragedy, and like a river, not allowing it to overflow its banks by having sandbags along the edge. And on the other hand, our tragedy, our seriousness, our deep, meaningful moments allows the river of our life's path to be something deep and strong with significant currents within it, rather than being nothing more than a pail of water dumped out in a parking lot, spreading every which way and meaning basically nothing as it evaporates into the sun again. It is possible to go through life as superficially as one wants, but I feel sorry for people who do that, because to me they miss all the best parts of genuinely good relationship, because they are nothing more after the experience than they were before. As much as they say you can't take it with you, meaning all the material goods, the wealth, the houses, the cars, whatever, I do believe that what we do take with us is the memories and the love and the wisdom. That life is ultimately about the growth of the soul. To the extent that we increase our capacity for love, and we increase our capacities and our abilities in wisdom, that to me insists that somewhere in the mix there was genuinely good relationship, even if it didn't necessarily look like it at the time. In any case, I thank you very much for watching. I hope these comments on good relationship have been helpful to you, but understand that as you approach your own life with humility and openness, your life itself will have many things to teach you about what makes good relationship. And perhaps one of the things that makes for any good relationship is the fact that it is growing and changing, developing and evolving from one moment to the next. It is never only what it was, but always more so. Thank you for watching.